if you can be real in a room and genuinely being real, not fake real, that can induce trust with people. And you'll have your mistakes, right? You'll have your misunderstandings occasionally over a period of time. But if you can be real, if you can induce trust, you build the foundation of a relationship, right? And then it can lead to sales, it can lead not lead to sales, it can lead to a friendship, it can lead to companionship, it can lead to so many other things, right? But I think that's the two basic life skills. Be real.
This week's episode is with someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years, both personally and professionally. He's driven by passion, which reflects in everything that he does at work and in his free time. Vijay Subramaniam, the CEO of Collective Artists Network, formerly known as Quan Entertainment, is a man of many talent. He's a drummer, an amazing dancer, but in my mind, his most important skill is his ability to sell and convince people to believe in his vision. In this episode, Vijay and I speak about qualities that make a great salesperson, about his personal experiences handling crisis, and his persistence to resilience.
Chalo karo.
Chalu karo. This should be the opening for sure. I'm going to make sure I'm not going to cut this part because that sets the tonality of our relationship. Welcome to questions I wanted to ask Vijay. Of course, honor, pleasure, all of that. But I'm really, really happy to have you. This is probably my most formal conversation with you ever.
I'm happy to be here.
When I was thinking and as to, I have to get Vijay and, come and talk. I think the work that you do is for the world to see in terms of the company that you build, the people you groom, and the people you work with. But behind all of this is a man that I've had the opportunity to know very, very, very closely. Right? I think I wanted to bring out those traits which have made you or which have got you to this point today, and everything that surrounds around it. Right? I will get into the sales conversation, the part that makes you who you are and have gotten you here. But tell me, what got you last year into this entire health mode?
I didn't want any part, I didn't want the atmosphere to get the better of me. I think for that, I had to find ways in keeping myself engaged constructively. So, I mean, of course, because you're a business owner, the perils of survival in times like this just take a better part of your mind space. The best way to fight it is keeping yourself occupied positively from a constructive perspective. And I just felt that, working out gave me that little outlet of half an hour to 1 hour a day. But itna kuch actually, me, Aranchu, itna kuch philosophical thought process नहीं था, time था, जिम नहीं जाना था, ड्राइंग रूम में आना था और ड्राइंग रूम को कन्वर्ट करना था मिनी जिम में, so you could save time. And I just started doing it immediately once the lockdown started. Of course, I was working out till then. My journey had begun about a year prior to the first lockdown, and I just decided to take it every day. And actually, there wasn't a moment कि अभी मैं करूँगा. करते गया, and you saw the results, and you just kept going, right? I think that's the beauty of the concept of inertia, right? You don't stop and check why, how, and at what moment did things start clicking. When it's clicking, you just keep going. And there's a time of day where you can look back and say, okay, that was the moment. That for me, there was no such moment. I had time. I had time to want to use constructively outside of the business. And I knew the only way of doing it. So I decided that I'm not going to be the guy who's going to ruin my days, my free time, whatever little bit I had of it in a day, by doing binge watching on OTT. Right? I decided that I will use it constructively. So I focused a lot on reading. I focused a lot on exercise. And of course, I mean, whenever I got the time, I did watch a couple of shows, etc. But I think outside of work, which took about 80% of my day, if not more, I decided to sort of bucket it into these two things: getting knowledge as much of knowledge as I can, increasing that 60-minute rule a day to about an hour and a half or two, and workout. These are the two things.
But tell me, I mean, I think you're missing a very important point, which because I've had this thing to know, is that inspiration also came from your wife.
Okay, let me put on record. But everyone wants me to say this. Actually, no. Yes, my wife is a very inspiring person in my life.
The woman in your life gave you the inspiration.
Yeah, she's the only woman in my life from a romantic perspective who I've known from the age of 18. So I think my wife did have a very, very strong role to play. It really helps that you have a fitness partner. That you do stuff together. It's one of those things you can do as a couple, right? So we decided to pick it up together. Even now, we tend to coordinate our times in a way where at least 70% of our monthly workouts, we try and do it together. It's also a great way of, because also, Anshu, the fact is, this better than most. The time I spent at home for the better part of pre-lockdown, all my life was negligible, right? I used to have 16-hour days or 15-hour days. I also took that, so I mean, this was also something we really enjoyed, because for the first time we got to do something together consistently in a very, very long time. So I think that also really helped, the fact that we could be workout buddies. So yes, I hear it on Instagram. I hear it on a couple of other podcasts I've been on, your wife. So yes, I do, and I am inspired by my wife.
How did you expect I'll not bring that up?
I don't know, because you are also a Doobie is for the viewers. Doobie is my wife. You're also a Doobie fan club, so good for you. But itna hi pyar hai to get her on the podcast.
Okay, tell me. The one thing that you and I have shared common for the 7, 8 or whatever number of years we worked together was sales, right? For me, it wasn't just that process of going and selling something to the client. I think it's an experience, right, wherein you build layers and layers on your own personality, and what I call you do storytelling. What makes you that special or that great salesperson?
What is sales fundamentally? It's about establishing a rapport with the person in front of you and convincing him to make a purchase and spend his money.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially is a sale, right?
Yeah.
Your ability to extract someone's money from their wallet.
Or sometimes non-monetary also. You sometimes might just sell,
No, I think if you're asking me a Puritan question of what is sales.
In business sense, yes.
Yeah. Then in sales, there's no sales without revenue.
Yeah.
Right. I have this classic conversation with my team, right? Saying, I have a great relationship with this client. Outstanding. Matlab, super. You've been with me. You say, nah, if there's anything, he'll call me. And then my question will be, did he call you? Right? Because see, I have a very simple belief. If someone is spending money in your domain of expertise,
sure,
right, and you claim to have a great relationship with that person, there's no reason why, if they're already expending money in that domain, you don't have a piece of that. Right? So I fundamentally am not a big believer. If you're talking to me there are two questions, right? One is sales and one is building relationships. They're two very disparate questions, right? If you're talking to me about sales eventually at the end, your relationship culminates into materialistic value in terms of revenue, right? And I keep telling my team this, that eventually what the greatest sales guys are in a position to do 2 or 3 things. They're in a position to get into a room and build a really strong emotional rapport, not because it's fake. I keep telling people I hate insurance type selling, right? Or cold call type selling randomly, right? Like how you get calls from various service providers during the course of the middle of a day, right? I think the number one thing is the greatest sales guys are in a position to build in trust and dependability from the get-go with the people they work with, right? And secondly, that trust and dependability eventually leads to business.
Yeah.
Right? I think, but it's not fake. I genuinely care for my clients, right? I genuinely believe that my advice to them makes a difference. So again, when you say sales is correlated to revenue, it can often be seen as a cold conversation, but it isn't, right? Because it's only seen as revenue if you're going and, in pure crass jargon, chipkawing something that, doesn't benefit the other person. Right?
Sure.
I believe that for somebody to come back to you, you'll only go to a restaurant again if you feel good about it, right? If the service was good, you won't go to a restaurant again if the food was awesome but the service was crap, right? You will think twice about it, right? So I think that's what you need to do. Eventually, it's great relationship building, which results to trust for transaction, right? And I think that most great sales guys in the world have been able to do that. They've been able to build a great bond with their clients or consumers, and that's translated to business.
But tell me something. So relationship building in my mind happens at stage 2. Before that, you have to still go to the restaurant, right? You have to convince the client to buy that product or service from you. How do you, when you start at a cold stage wherein you've not known that person, maybe you're reaching out through LinkedIn, maybe you're reaching out through, in earlier times that yellow pages format, right? How do you go to that relationship stage from zero to that first step?
I believe a lot of it is, Anshu, is aspects that people don't pay attention to, right? Like, for example, when I used to cold call, and I used to be a serial cold caller.
Do you want to talk about that? No, I know those stories, but do you want to talk about how
I used to call 150 clients a day, right? I used to be a serial cold caller, right?
Yeah.
But the beauty about cold calling is, if there are young sales guys watching this, I mean, we are no pundits, but you can only talk about prior experience.
Yeah.
Is you customize every call.
Absolutely.
Right? You do a little bit of research, right? What is this person like, right? What is this person? You modulate your voice. It's something as simple as, how do you say hello, right? Because we've all been in that position where at 10:30 in the morning, hi sir, I'm calling from XYZ bank, wanted to check whether you have a home loan, and we've all turned around and said, sir, we don't have the time for it right now, I'm in a meeting, can I call you back? That is your cold call. Right? How do you, and I'm telling you that I've answered a lot of those banking calls when the guy in front of me has done something in the first 20 seconds to grab my attention. Right? And I feel that happens by the way your tone of your call approaches, right? By the way you're sending a mail, right? Like, for example, I'm not a believer in cut, copy, paste mails, right? I'm a believer in customized mails, right? I don't believe in hi XYZ, this is what we do, please find attached, XYZ. I don't necessarily believe in that email. I believe there's a concept of ice breaking, and that ice breaking is dependent on each person's personality, right? So, if you're cold calling, you cold call in a way that your personality comes out enough for you to get that 1 minute. And then it's in that 1 minute that you master your pitch, right? What is it that sets you apart? Why should you have that 1 minute of that guy's time with you, right? Because eventually, what are you doing? Time is money. You're expecting somebody to give you time, right? And I think that's the number one thing that I check. So for me, for example, when I do interviews for sales guys, I don't necessarily look at their CVs. I have not read a CV of a single sales guy who's applied to me in the last 6-8 years. I look at the quality of my interaction.
Yeah.
Why should I give you 10 minutes of my time, right? That's it. If you can convince me that you're good enough to take 10 minutes of my time, you can be straight out of college, or you could have worked at the biggest company, right? And that doesn't matter to me, right? Because sales is all about personality, right? It's all about having the ability to influence a room, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it starts with that, with your first impression, right?
And
so you have to make great first impressions.
But tell me what happens so for example, if you're targeting 10 clients and there's that one difficult client, no matter what you do, might not like you just for your personality trait. Sometimes there's a personality clash, but this guy is going to do a lot of business or has the ability to give me. And it often ends up being that one person, right? जिससे सबसे ज्यादा काम होता है, कई बार वो सबसे ज्यादा difficult होता है. वो बंदा क्रैक करना, वो काउंट क्रैक करना. How do you tackle that?
You can't have a personality clash. It's not his problem that his personality or her personality doesn't match with you. You want his business, so you bloody well make sure that you match into his personality. right? So I don't give I will never give myself the high-handedness of saying, if you're my client, if you're a buyer, right? You and I have a personality clash, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm looking for business from you. You're not looking for business from me, right? And I feel that there is a way, Anshu, that you can build an equation of parity, fairness, and equality without subservience, right?
Sure.
And you have to understand, that's the art of a great sales guy. You asked me a question, which is what differentiates a great sales guy from not. Because the fact of the matter is, if it is that one client that will make a difference, you have to find a way of cracking. And I've had it. Like, I've had situations where people have blocked my number, right? I've had a head of a fashion brand in 2008, right? Where he didn't want to talk to me, right?
Yeah.
But I found a way to speak to somebody else in his organization, impress him so much that he gave me a good reference, and the guy started talking to me, right? And we did business together, right? Because the fund, what is it? If you're a 21-year-old sales guy, you basically forget everything else here. You need to have two crude and crass qualities: shamelessness and relentlessness. You cannot have an ego.
Those are life skills, Vijay.
Phone katega, you'll get hung up on. But so it happens all the time, right? You know, and at times, and that's what it is, right? A lot of guys take it on their ego, right?
Yeah.
And as you go bigger as a company, like you look at us, we're the largest players in our space, right? You know, I wouldn't put it as a beyond my sales guy's mistake to walk in a room with a chip on his shoulder, but I'll keep saying, you know, you have to disarm the room.
Yeah.
Right? You have to make the other person comfortable, right? And that's literally the golden rule.
But tell me, you know, this in fact, this conversation came in my last, recording with Raj Nayak, where, you know, Raj sir and I ended up talking about ego versus self-respect, right? Where does that self-respect, where does ego stop and self-respect come in case of a sales guy? And sorry, I'm just cutting you in, but also, especially when you're pitching to H&I clients or celebrity clients, right? When you want their accounts, when you want to work with them and all of that, how do you differentiate that? Okay, now it's no more about ego. It's now about my self-respect.
You know, Anshu, these are very personal vanity metrics, right? Like, just because someone speaks to me a certain way, you know, okay, let me put it this way. It's about also which stage of life you're in.
Sure.
How much do you want it?
Yeah.
You're a young, hungry guy who's saying, I'm willing to take anything.
Yeah.
But that's where I want to go. But I want to do it on my own moral terms, where I will not do something unethical, but I have the ability or insatiable appetite to do whatever it takes, right? To put in 19 hours a day, to take that guy hanging up on me, to take that, you know, occasional bad boss. Because it's just not about clients, right? What does it separate? Like, I've been with abusive bosses, right? In my previous organization, I've been with abusive bosses, right? Where I've gotten very seriously, you know, when I say, there's one thing if you're joking around in a room, you know, and it's a very completely different ball game if it's a completely different conversation, but it's always about how much do you want it, right? So ego, self-respect, these are defined by stages of life. At what stage of life are you in? And because every stage of life is an evolution, right? You might not want to be spoken a certain way at the age of 35 as you would have been at the age of 15, right? Or 18 or 20, right? So I feel ego and self-respect are metrics which are very personal. I don't think there's a generalized rule, but yeah, I will never ever tell anyone. It's happened so many times, you know, people say, sir, he's speaking to me very badly, right? बहुत गंदी तरह बात कर रहा है.
Right? You and I have gone through
We've gone through that, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, look at an air hostess or look at a steward in a flight, right? How many times have we been on a flight where somebody has really spoken to them badly, right? And these people are not people who are in need of that money to be spoken to like that, right? But you've always seen them saying, sir, you've always seen them trying to calm a situation. I've never seen a mid-air fight where a steward or an air hostess has turned around and you know, spoken disparagingly to a passenger who's been disrespectful, right? Now, how do you buy? How do you categorize that? Do you categorize that as lack of self-respect and lack of ego, or do you categorize that this is my job and this is what my job will throw at me occasionally, and I've signed up for it and I need to stomach it. But fundamentally, if you're saying you're a sales, if you're saying that you're in a service business, understand the business. You're in the service business. If you can't have the stomach for being in a service business, be the client.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's also depending
Absolutely.
on you making your choices, right? You wanted to come and work in a service business. You wanted to run a restaurant. How many times you see a restaurant owner throw a badly behaved guest out of the restaurant?
Yeah.
How many times
Yeah.
do you see, a hotel manager speak to an irate HNI or an irate or a terribly behaved guy in the receptionist and say, you know what, if you have such a big problem, leave my hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a reduction, right? That guy must be making 7-digit paycheck, but he still sits there. I understand your problem, sir. I understand your problem, ma'am, and all of that. So it depends on, you've chosen this life and it comes with its pluses and minuses.
Mhm. Interesting. Tell me, if I have to recap this part of the conversation, the reason I chose sales because I thought that it's one of those life skills that you need always to be with you, right? To be able to sell and tell your story, whatever you are telling. Uh, if I were to ask you, what are those 2 or 3 most important life skills that you would want to, see, say, in your kids and the people that you work really closely with? I mean, just your personal view. It could be
I have
different.
only,
There's
I,
no right.
I think I'll break it down into 3 things, Anshu. You have
Yeah.
to be very real, right? Because if you're real, you connect with people. Why are bands such a phenomenon? Because when those 5 guys are on stage, they're being real in their expression.
Yeah.
Right?
In their art.
How
Yeah.
different? Like when I'm in a pitch, I'm performing.
Yeah.
I'm an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that my stage has 3 people,
Yeah.
or my audience has 3 people, but they're still my audience, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I keep telling people that off late, I keep telling people that I don't want to walk in with a PPT
Absolutely. Yeah.
because I believe I'm my best presentation, right? And why am I my best presentation? Because I want to be real and authentic, right?
Yeah.
Tell your story in the realest way possible. This is me. This is what we do. We will make mistakes, but this is how we will protect you. This is how we will do what needs to get done. So I think realism is one thing. Don't do anything that can bring mistrust with you, right?
Sure.
Because what you're asking me from a life skill perspective, if you can be real in a room and genuinely being real, not fake real, that can induce trust with people. And you'll have your mistakes, right? You'll have your misunderstandings occasionally over a period of time. But if you can be real, if you can induce trust, you build the foundation of a relationship, right? And then it can lead to sales, it can not lead to sales, it can lead to a friendship, it can lead to companionship, it can lead to so many other things, right? But I think that's the 2 basic life skills. Be real.
And tell me, in all of this, there's something called as resilience, which I've seen in you in the last couple of years. I've always seen that in you in the last 8-10 years that I've known you. But I think particularly in the last, couple of years, or in other words, some people will call it crisis management. Some people will call it resilience. What have you learned that anybody who's hearing you, because of course the world knows what you have, as a company, as an individual would have gone through. You were taking care of so many people at the same time, right? What made you still get up in the morning and say, okay, no, I'll fight this out, I'll figure it out? How did you, or how, or what, or whatever?
I don't think the answer to that also is complicated, and this is why I love a lot of people keep saying my wife has a continuous complaint saying not everything can be treated in such a simplified way.
That's
Right?
fine.
The answer to that is very simple, Anshu. It's purpose, and my purpose is my company.
Mm-hmm.
If I wake up in the morning and I'm waking up in the morning thinking every day that this is my company, this is my army, these are my generals, these are my soldiers, these are the people I need to protect, then that's what gives you a strength to wake up every morning and fight for it. It's as simple as that. I will not let anybody down. I will not let people lose their jobs. I will not let this get the better of me, because what is my purpose? My purpose is the collective artist network, right? My purpose is the fact that we employ 180 to 200 of the best young minds in this country in media and entertainment. We work with the very finest clients in the business. And I think the purpose is really to sit and fight for them and ensure that you don't let them down every morning. And when that's your purpose, you wake up every morning and you find solutions. Because I think crisis also leads to opportunity. And believe me, as stupid as it may sound, it has given us so much strength and it has made us so much better, right? Because I think crisis is the best crash course which no book can teach you, right? And really, your mental resilience gets put to task. When you're fighting it, you're not really thinking that much. You're more acting. You're more, in the moment. It's on these conversations only become, oh, this was like this post
It's
facto.
much later. Yeah.
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 But I think it boils down to purpose, and my purpose is very singular, and it's my people. And I say it unabashedly. I say it without battering an eyelid.
Hmm. Interesting. But is that was has there been a moment in the last 3-4 years of crisis wherein you said that I need to put myself away from the company and first look at myself, because in situations like this you are supposed to think about yourself and protect yourself first. It's like पहले खुद का seat belt लगाओ and then दूसरों का लगाओ.
नहीं यार, इनफैक्ट बहुत बातें हुई.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, people will keep telling you this, but I mean, when things like this happen, a lot of your well-wishers call you, and you have conversations. But people who really know you will also know that this is not a conversation you can even have. See, because I think the fundamental truth of it, right, is you'll only think of abandoning ship if you have something wrong in your heart, right? When you know in your mind that it's all you have personally, right, have only the right intentions, right, and you personally, for me, I won't be able to live with that, right? I mean, you always want to, if and when in life you want to sign off, you want to sign off on a high, right? You never want to sign off on a low, right?
Mm.
And so the straight question to that is, did I ever think of it? The straight answer to that is no. Why no? It's not because there's any glorified answer to that. It again boils back to purpose. Why do you get up and do every day what you do, right? And I keep asking my people, what is your purpose, right? Some people could have the purpose, just to be like, Raj sir's purpose is so good, right? Happy, spreading happiness. It's a great purpose. You look at that man, you interact with him. He's the biggest media mogul that one can interact with. You met him when you were in the CEO. We met him when he was in the CEO office, and he'll welcome you with a smile.
Smile, yeah.
Right? He will treat you the same way he would treat a big Bollywood star. And when I say not me, because when he started interacting with us, you were very senior. I was the owner of the firm. But, when we would take our colleagues who were junior, right? He would address them. But that was his purpose, right? My purpose is I'm just too goddamn passionate about the company and the people in this company. Right? And that's what takes me, and what we're creating. What we're creating for the Indian entertainment business. And I think there's nothing that's strong enough yet to that will make me deviate from that.
Tell me something, in all of this madness, and because you're so purpose driven, your day starts with thinking about the clients and the people that you work with, etc. How do you find that balance? And I know, and I'm particularly asking because I know it has been an acquired skill for you. You're somebody who's so passionate about his work that you did struggle finding that balance, right? But I think you worked on it. I want you to share those learnings. How do you cut off? How do you put yourself away and find that balance?
I'm still bad at it. I'm still very imbalanced. See, answer me one question, and I don't know how to answer it. Right? I'm throwing it. Would you ask this question to a cricketer?
Yeah, balance is for everyone.
I don't think so. I don't think today you can ask Virat Kohli, how do you find balance when you're spending 12 months on the tour, right?
Yeah.
These questions only get asked to people who go to office more often than not. Right? The concept of work-life balance is meant for people who are not in the limelight. Correct? It's to the CEOs, it's to the general managers, it's to the daily wage worker, etc. But I believe the reason why I don't have that balance, because I genuinely don't disconnect what I do professionally from what I am personally. Right?
Sure.
It's like when I used to play in my band, right? The band was not anything extraordinary I'm doing in my day. It's my passion, right? And not very many of us can wake up every day and tell each other that we are actually pursuing our passion,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
agree.
when you pursue your passion on a day-to-day basis, right? A fitness influencer is making money because he's pursuing his or her passion when he wakes up every single day, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, if I want to build something which is of enormous relevance in the Indian media and entertainment business, I'm waking up with passion. So I don't think the question is balance. I think the question is more, how do you accommodate for things outside of your passion? That more is
Okay.
the question, right? And
Okay.
I think for me, that comes by understanding the fact that I have to accommodate it to get some time to think,
Sure.
right? Like, for example, because I took some time off in on one random Friday night and I decided to watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan's and Chicago Bulls story on Netflix, I was in a position to package a massive docudrama in a genre similar for the Indian audiences today, which will release in the next couple of months, right?
Okay.
But it gave me a thought. Now, if I didn't do that, it might not have given me that thought, right? Or for example, reading. Of late, I've gotten into a lot of reading of, say, modern history, right? I'm reading a lot. I read a great book on Genghis Khan and the making of the modern global history, right? It gives you so much insight towards, you know, things that people do, things that people think of, right? Which eventually leads back to your passion, right? Or you spend time. A lot of the time, this kind of reading has also helped me with my kids, right? In the way spending time with your kids constructively is a separate. It's a dopamine shot, right? It gives you a separate high altogether, right?
Uh,
I've had that, the number of times. So I feel I've had to accommodate the other stuff to enjoy my passion more,
hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I think if I didn't do that, you'll just get lost. I don't believe in the concept of, I do not believe in it. Sorry, the wrong way of putting it. I've never felt burnout in that sense,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And I've never felt, yaar, mere se nahi ho raha hai, main chhod raha hu. Right? I've never had that moment because I believe that the day I have that moment, I'll leave. Right? I will not think about it so much. Uh, but I feel the concept of creating a space from, if you're passion if you're stuck in a job that you don't want to do, then you need that time, right, to re-energize. It's even more dangerous for people who are following their passion, because then they can get so lost in that everything else can be just blackened out, right? So I found that need to. So I think fitness is that. So today I can confidently tell you that when I'm working out for those 40 minutes, my phone's not with me, right? It's something as small as if I want to read peacefully in the night, I need to ensure that my phone is inverted on my bedside table, right? I'm not. That's why I don't read off my phone, right? So I think these little things that I have done to bring in what people call as balance, but what I call is slightly more time to cultivate other parts of my life, right? And I also see that being constructive. I don't just see that as being wasteful time.
Tell me, you were never a reader. You actually kind of got on to the bandwagon of reading much later in your life, right?
Yeah, 2012,
How?
13,
Sorry,
2012, 2013.
2012, 2013. Tell me, how did you inspire yourself to read? And
I don't think I would have had a choice, Anju, because
Mhm.
I don't think if you don't accumulate knowledge, I don't think I think you hit a glass ceiling. And if you claim to talk a big game, and if you claim that your ambitions are really that high, you can't do it without having a daily mechanism for learning.
Sure.
Right? So for me, I started reading because I realized that I may be a guy who might do 100, 200 crores worth of deals in a year at that point in time, right? Which was 20,000, 2011, 2012. But I realized that, you know, that's all that you'll be, right? So how do you widen your horizon? How do you become bigger? And I used to read. It was not like I never used to read. I used to follow daily, regular
The
reading, right?
basic news and all.
Basic news. So
Yeah.
when you call me a reader, I mean now I'm a voracious reader, right? What I mean by saying is books and articles or new form. But I used to have a half an hour model of learning every day. Today, which was non-negotiable. Today, that's organically become much more. And I feel that's only happened because I genuinely said to myself that if I don't do this, I will hit a glass ceiling very, very soon. If I don't find a mechanism to learn.
So, what does your daily mechanism of learning include? Reading? What else?
Reading in the last couple of years, because of great friends like Varun Dugirala, yourself now, podcasts have come into my life. But otherwise, a lot of reading, a very consistent reading list, and my Kindle.
Okay, we're almost towards, because I want to keep it very concise, we're almost towards the end of the conversation. Give me your top 3 recommendation for books for people in the entertainment business, or generally, people who aspire to be in the entertainment business. What would be your top 2 or 3 recommendation from books perspective?
I mean, people who want to be in the entertainment business, I would think read Ovitz. It's quite the. It's,
Mailroom.
Yeah, no, Ovitz, not Mailroom.
Ovitz.
You can read Mailroom or Ovitz. I don't think either or is an issue. It's a very, very beautiful book I read, which I made it a mandatory read for my sales team. I forgot. It's called The Art of Sales, something like that. I'll message it to you. You can probably put it in your text in your podcast later. And I learned a lot on strategy by reading Genghis Khan and the Making of Modern India, Making of the Modern History. It was an outstanding read. I will definitely reread it because it just showed that how that man at that age broke so many traditional barriers, right? The concept of meritocracy in a monarchy, which didn't exist, right? And he brought that in. So that was a great, great read. So I think these would be the 3 books that I would recommend.
And generally, a one life book, if all your all time favorites.
Life book to kids.
चलो एक दो बता दो.
So many.
You know how therapeutic, I won't say therapy, how interesting it is to actually ask book recommendations from you. Yeah. This is the first time we're having a book conversation. So yeah.
I was very inspired by Open.
Andre Agassi. Yeah.
Again, just perseverance, right? The strong. Whenever we spoke about relentlessness and perseverance,
yeah.
I keep telling people that your lack of aptitude can always be made up with your absolute desire to have the best attitude. And I think that book for me summarized that, right? I believe I'm a lot like that. I believe I'm more hardworking and that's what gets me more than, just general smarts in that sense. So I think that book for me was a life lesson in perseverance, relentlessness, conquering so many demons that one has to deal with. So I think I would put Open to be right up there.
Interesting. That was quite an interesting conversation.
Otherwise, I would have given a lot more book names.
Sorry?
I'm not good with remembering names of books.
That's fine. This is also the first time I've actually had any of these conversations that we've had during this recording. I've never spoken to you before about any of these topics, and you know that. We've discussed the world, but not these topics, and that's the reason probably, it goes on to become an interesting, episode. Thank you so much. I don't know how do I encapsulate this in terms of an episode, but it's been a pleasure to have you, Vijay.
Thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you hit the like button, comment what was your favorite part, and also subscribe to the channel. We have lots of fantastic people coming up. This podcast is available on your podcast app by the name Questions I Wanted to Ask. You can also follow me on social media for more updates, short format content. Links will be in the description.